And first thing I'd like to do is get ask for somebody make a motion to adopt today's agenda, please.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Great. Any opposed? Motion passed. Thank you. And secondly, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes of our governance meeting that was conducted on September 15th.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Great, motion's passed. Thank you. Okay, for today's discussion, what I'd like to do is use a red line version. If we could go ahead and bring that up on the screen, please. And then I know folks have to bug out a little bit early or whatever, but I think we can get through the first three portions of the agenda, which is to go final first on the policy category 2, board management delegation, and then go final on the JEA bylaws portion, and then go final on the JEA board evaluation criteria. And then we'll go on and conduct our initial comments and edits on policy category 1.0 governance process, minus the JEA bylaws, obviously, and also review the initial comments edits on a policy category 4.0, measures of effectiveness. Okay, so that said, if we could, first we'll go on to the category 2, board management delegation, and go final. And actually, this one's pretty straightforward. If you could go to page 243, please. And as we're bringing this up, okay, great, thank you. Really, the only do out was to go on the CEO remuneration. And bottom line is, we just did a direct lift from Article 21 provisions of what the CEO remuneration is. So here it is. You can see it's all highlighted. But bottom line, that was it. I think the rest of the portions of the board management delegation were pretty straightforward. So I'll pause to see if there's any comments or questions. Okay, none heard. If I could have a motion to bring this final to the board meeting for approval for the section of the category 2.
So move.
Please.
Second.
Great. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Great, thank you. All those opposed? Great. Okay, category 2, motion board delegation is passed, and we'll bring this to the board for final approval on that. Thank you. Okay, next one is to go final on the JEA bylaws. And if you could go to page 222, please. Great, thank you. And again, the bylaws, one, we're being incorporated into the policy category 1.0 governing process instead of keeping it a separate document. And then just if you see it section 5 there at the bottom portion, bottom line is last meeting we discussed redefining the secretary's duties, and it seems to be more pragmatic. And just one correction on the very last sentence, we need to go ahead and delete where it says executive committee, because we decided at the last board meeting not to have an executive committee. So we'll go ahead and delete that for the final edit. And then if you go to page 223, please. And then if you just note in section 3, special meetings no later than 7 days prior for the meeting to be conducted. And then if you go to page 224, please. And here we
Is there any way we can increase the size of the documents? Thank you.
Leon, you need an eye test, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
You just helped us all. Thank you.
I know. I was the only one who was. I just wanted to admit it.
Yeah, that's why I got my glasses on. For the teleconference and video section on section 4 there, we just discussed about changing the wording so that all members are able to hear, not necessarily see, which I think makes sense. So that really was the major final edits we had on the bylaws. I'll pause to see if there are any questions or comments. Okay, if I could have a motion to bring this to the board for full approval.
Move approval.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Great, thank you. All those opposed? And the motion's passed. Thank you. Okay, then the final action for today is on the board evaluation criteria. And if you could go to page 270, please. Great, thank you. Now, this is an eye chart too, but bottom line is we had some great feedback from all the committee members, and we basically added 7 more items to this. The first add was on line 6, understand JEA's MOE so accurate assessments can be made. The second add was line 10, understand the CEO's evaluation criteria. The third add is line 15, actively self-educate and stay current with industry trends. Next one was 16, work in conjunction with the CEO on a succession plan. Next one was 17, actively look into improved processes. And that's actually dictated by Article 21.2 in the current draft. Next one was line 20, board briefing packets are complete and issued at least 7 days in advance of meetings. Then the final one, line 22, demonstrates the principle of transparency in its governance activities. So those were the 7 adds we had to what the original draft list was, and I'll just stand by for any comments or questions. Okay, none heard. So I'd like to ask for a motion to approve this JEA board self-assessment evaluation.
So moved.
Second, please. Second. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed? None heard. Action passed. Thank you. Okay, next one. We'll start looking at our initial comments and edits for policy category 1.0, the governance process. And if you could go to page 226, please. And I see that Chair Baker's joined us. Good morning, John. Okay, thank you. Okay, on this one, there's several things to highlight here, although they all make sense. I don't think there's anything that complicated. First, on 1.2.10, in the bottom it's highlighted. Bottom line is there is a lot of onboarding requirements. And this lists the major ones that we all went through, but I think the key one is coordinating with the executive staff assistants for the current onboard requirements for that. And then, as you can see in 1.2.11, the JEA board evaluation done annually. Again, and that should say as per Appendix A3, not A2. Now, this is also dictated in the Article 21 draft Article 21 too. Let me pause here to see if there are any comments on this page. Okay, none heard. If you go to the next page, please, 227. Okay. Great, scroll down a little. Okay, thank you. And then you see 1.3.4, annual board discussion of governance process improvement. And again, that's a good thing to do, also stipulated in Article 21.03 of the current draft. Okay, if you go to the next page on 228, please. And 1.4.3. There you go, thank you. Again, CEO evaluation criteria will be as per Appendix A1, which we already approved, the full board approved. And then on 1.4.4, the board performance as per, and it should say Appendix A3. and that's the one that we just approved for to go final before the board. Okay, if you go to page 229, please. Great, thank you. Okay, on 1.5.1 calls for an annual retreat. And again, I'll defer to Jody Brooks. I guess it's feasible. I'm still thinking, though, under sunshine laws, we're going to have to meet certain criteria for that. Is that about right, Jody?
Yes, Chairman DeSalvo, you can have a board retreat. It just has to be properly noticed through the sunshine regulations, but we've held retreats before, but it has to be properly noticed, and the public can attend if they so choose. But I'd work with you to get that properly scheduled and noticed.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jody. And then on 1.5.2, board documents, 7 days should be sent to those attending 7 days prior to the board meetings. Now, also in Article 21, it also, the draft one, it also states that it be sent to the city auditor too, which I don't think is an issue. It also says that we post this on the JEA.com website. And so the only question I got is, I don't know if we've been posting these on the JEA website prior. I haven't noticed any, but I may be looking in the wrong places. Paul or Steve, maybe you can comment on that.
This is Paul, Mr. Chairman. I generally think we post between the 7 days in the meeting, and we'll just go ahead and back this up going forward and post it at the same time that we distribute the document.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. Okay, if you go to page 230, the next page. Okay, thanks. If you go to, scroll down just a little bit more to 1.6.3, please. Okay, now the only concern I have on this one is same thing as far as posting, but it says in the JEA, in the Article 21.04 draft, they're proposing to minutes be posted on the JEA website, generally within 72 hours after the meeting. Now, Jody, what I'm sort of thinking is we don't approve the minutes until the following board meeting as an action. So I'm not sure how prudent that is or feasible for us to post the minutes 72 hours after the meeting when we haven't even, actioned those minutes for the following board. Any thoughts on that from a general counsel point of view?
Yeah, we definitely needed to review that more thoroughly because, again, the official minutes don't get authorized and approved until the following month or the following board meeting, like you have just relayed. So I don't know if there'd be an ability to put up a draft of the minutes within that time frame and to be finalized at the following meeting. But let me take a better look at that because 72 hours seems a little rushed to get them out. And again, they won't be the final minutes until they've been approved and voted on by the board. Yeah, I agree, Jody. And let me ask, I see Chair Baker's there along with my fellow committee members. Just any thoughts? I'm not comfortable with having it posted until we action this appropriately, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, General, I would completely concur. I mean, I wouldn't be comfortable with draft minutes being posted. I'm not sure what the purpose of that is. I think it would be entirely appropriate to delay posting until they've been acted upon and approved at the subsequent meeting.
Agree.
Thank you, Tom.
Agree.
I agree as well.
Great, thanks.
Zachary. I agree.
Okay, thanks, Zachary.
Yeah, the statute just says that they have to be posted in a reasonable time frame. And, is it reasonable that we post them after that they've been reviewed and approved and finalized by the board? I could argue that is reasonable. So it's the reasonableness standard of when you have to post them is what the statute would require. So I would be comfortable with that, unless I find out something different than that recommendation. I think that's how you should proceed.
Yeah, even very technically, I mean, posting the minutes. I mean, the minutes aren't actually the minutes until they're the approved minutes, right? Otherwise, they're sort of a set of notes that may or may not be the actual minutes. So if it's talking about a need to expeditiously post the minutes, again, I think the minutes can be defined as those that have been approved.
Correct.
Okay. I think so, Jody, if I heard you right, we do it in a reasonable amount of time, keeping it in line with after it's actioned appropriately, and then we should be okay. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Correct.
Okay. If you could go to page 233, please. Okay, and I need to get to, if you could, 1.8.2. Great. Okay, now on this one, I don't think it's a big deal, but on 1.8.2.c, there it's a stipulation that no board member will have contractual relationship with JEA directly or indirectly during their board tenure and for 2 years following the member's date of termination from the board. Now, again, from my foxhole, I don't see anything wrong with this. I call it the radioactive period. In 21.03, there used to be a clause in one of the drafts that this was also in there. In the most recent one, it's been dropped, and not sure why. But regardless, again, I still think it's appropriate just to avoid any potential conflict of interest or just the perception period, which can become a reality on having this 2-year moratorium. Just like to ask thoughts of the fellow committee members on that.
I think it's a good policy.
I do too.
Thank you, John.
Need to clarify it all and say it's really a personal relationship? Because all of us, since we get our power and water from JEA, have a professional relationship with our organizations on some level. So do we need to clarify that at all?
Good question, Leon. Jody, what do you think?
I'm actually very sorry. I was looking at the statute and the words promptly record the minutes versus reasonable. But from a promptness perspective, I still think we're good. But I'm sorry, I missed the question. Okay, so we're looking at the. Well, go ahead, Leon.
I was just saying under 1.8.2c, but although all of it, we talk about board members not having a contractual relationship with JEA. Do we need to clarify that and say that that's really a personal relationship? Because all of us contract with JEA in some level, either personally at our homes or our jobs. So I think what we're really talking about is the individual and an individual contractual relationship. Do we need to clarify it, or is it just okay the way it is?
Because you're raising the issue, you may want to put in the word individual contractual relationship. But again, the relationship, I thought we had discussed before that, because you have utility, customer accounts and those sorts of things, that's not what we're talking about.
Okay.
But if you wanted, if it concerns you, we definitely could modify the language.
I don't know if it concerns me. I just want to make sure everybody's clear about what it means, and if the public reads it, they're clear about what it means.
I kind of agree with Leon. I think we should err on the side of being succinct and not leaving it open for interpretation. I think what Leon is sharing kind of indicates that it could be left open. So I'd like for us to be able to further clarify it.
Could we say professional relationship?
I think this is Paul. I think maybe the the best way and the intent, I think, in hearing from the council and in drafting some of this language in 21 was to exclude from this prohibition utility services agreements between JEA and past board members. And then it sort of more broadly captures the personal interest, and in some cases, personal interest incorporate in some of the discussion a past board member's firm, as well as the individual board member.
So you're suggesting no board member will have a contractual relationship, comma, excluding utility services relationships, comma, with JEA?
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to say it.
I think that works.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, that makes sense too on this end. Okay, we'll work on the wording for that, as to just what was said for that. Okay, great. Okay, if you could go to page 236, please. And we'll look at 1.11.3, and it's at the very bottom. So here we're talking about the committees, standing committees, and I guess I'm not sure if it's an issue, it's a consideration for the governance committee. Do we make it standing or not? Now I'll just say there's pros and cons of doing it both ways. We are required to convene at least once a year to look at our processes and also our board policy manual to see if we need to update it based on what's transpired throughout the year. So that's sort of that's a consideration. The question I got, and again, Jody, I hate to put you on the spot, but if the governance committee stands down, then when we need to activate it, I guess we need to do a charter every time we need to activate it, as opposed to if we were standing, then we're good to go. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so again, I think it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. Just we do have to convene at least once a year, again, to meet the Article 21 requirement. So just what do you all think on making it a standing committee or activate as necessary?
I think we ought to make it a standing committee, because what tends to happen is it gets forgotten. And so there is no review annually. And if it's a standing committee, the chair of the committee will make sure it happens.
Okay, John, thanks.
I would agree.
Okay, I think then we'll go ahead and put that in as a standing committee for that. Okay, then last one on this one, if you go to page 237, please, the next page. And 1.12.2C. Yeah, you'll just notice where there's a clause in there, audit and other third-party monitoring of organizational performance. And this is for your all situation awareness. I had a conversation with Paul and Steve Tootin, and we discussed about having an external entity critique our board policy manual. And I think this is really a good idea. It helps us, see if we have any blind spots in it. And the idea on this is we would look to have somebody take a look at our policy manual once it's approved by the board, and suspected to be right now in December. And then later on in the early part of 2021, get their feedback. And again, because this board policy manual is going to be a living document, and that the governance committee will more than likely be a standing one, I think that's perfectly fine. If we need to fire and adjust based on some good external recommendations, so be it. It makes us look better. But just any thoughts on that at all?
Don't disagree with the process at all. Who would be the consulting entity? Is that the Governance Institute or somebody that generally looks at board policy manuals in general, or specific to the utility industry?
Yeah, let me, and that's what we're working through right now. Paul, any thoughts on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going through a process in terms of putting together the request for proposal. We'll bid the market, and we're going to identify entities such as Tom pointed out, as well as others in terms of the large accounting and consulting firms that have practices in this area.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And so, so as far as this portion of the governance category, that really covers all the comments received and edits. And I'll just pause to see if anybody has any other comments or questions on this portion.
You've done a great job. Thank you.
I was to say, great work getting through it.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, good. And last
Mr.
one,
Chair.
Yeah, please, Paul.
Just one very quick comment, more from an operational standpoint. I think the great work on behalf of the committee and the board on this, but in addition, there's been so much work on this, and we've been talking at a staff level between here and the changes in the charter to ensure that we've got a resource identified within the utility and the compliance area that will track this certainly for the next 12 to 24 months and report to the board that we are complying with the policy statements in this document, as well as 100% compliance with the charter. And I think that's an important step. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And that also keys me. So next Monday and Tuesday, myself, Steve Tootin, and Kurt Wilson will be going to the City Council's TEU and also Rules Committee meetings on Monday and Tuesday. And really just a quick statement for them to understand that we are tracking their Article 21 draft. We'll stay in compliance. We're committed to transparency, et cetera. So that point that Paul just said will be emphasized with both those committees next week, just so you all have situation awareness on that. Okay, I think the final thing here is to look at our first initial comments on policy category 4.0, measures of effectiveness. And if you go to page 257, please. And again, I think I want to thank Steve and Steve Tootin's team and Paul's staff here for narrowing these down, getting some good definitions to them. Again, I went through it all. I didn't see anything wrong with these, and just very quickly, I think go through the next 4 pages on what the measures of effectiveness look like. Just I'll pause for any comments on these first 5 here. Okay, if you go to 258, please. Again, here with the water service. Okay, if you go to page 259, please. Of course, here is a sewer service. And if you go to the next page, please. Okay, and the next place. And then on this one on 4.5.2a, I guess the only question I had is, and I have no reason to question it, just the threshold for the 2,750 kilowatt hours. Just how's that determined?
That was a legacy calculation at the time, Mr. Chairman, and I believe this is about a decade old. And it was a line in terms of I believe it was the top 10% of residential users fell over that category in their consumption. So that this was focused at sort of environmental issues and conservation issues. We felt that those customers at the time were using more than their allocated share, and thus had a small incremental charge on their usage above that amount, which then was redeployed back into conservation measures, which all customers benefited by.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So is it still relevant, do you think, or does it need, does that specific metric, threshold need updated, do you think, or is it good as it stands?
We probably could have a look at it. That's probably, and we could take a note on that just to validate that where it is on the distribution, what percentage of customers in the distribution of usage. And we'll get that.
Mr. Chairman,
okay.
I still have trouble reading that paragraph, and it says by allocating 50 cents per megawatt hour of base revenues, but it doesn't say what we're allocating it to or for. I just don't know what we're saying.
Yeah, I thought it was to some type of whatever the conservation portfolio within JEA is, but Paul, let me defer to you on that.
Yeah, I think that could be a little clearer. It's essentially to the Electric System Conservation Fund, so to maintain the Electric Conservation Fund. And so there's two sources of funding that the conservation activities. One is essentially a surcharge on residential customers that utilize in a given month more than 2750 kilowatt hours, and against sort of all consumers 50 cents per megawatt hour.
Okay, so we allocate by allocating to the fund 50 cents.
Yeah.
Perfect. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't.
Okay, thanks.
I made it out to be.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And then if you go to the next page, 262.
General, I apologize. This is where I need to jump to my other unavoidable conflict. So if you're still on in a half an hour, I'll be back.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And then so at 4.6.4, again, I think this is a great one. Maintain, or if not there, get there to the top quartile of the JD Power ratings. And that's sort of the I think a universal metric that everybody strives for. The secret's going to be how do you get there, obviously, on it, but we've got a lot of smart people I know who can get us there for that. But so that's sort of what the MOEs look like right now. Again, I think Paul and Steve's staff there have done a great job on it. I'll just pause to see if there's any comments or questions on this policy category.
Chairman DeSalvo, this is Steve Tootin. I wanted to add, I know you had recommended 2 additional MOEs, safety standards 4.7 and financial resiliency 4.8. So we will be working on those. I'll reach out to the key staff with JEA that can drop in the relative, the measures of effectiveness for those. So we'll have those ready for review at the November meeting.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so nothing heard on the MOEs. So I think we're ready for closing remarks here. And first, for the Governors Committee members here, I know normally we take what we just discussed, the 2 policy categories to go that we went final on today, to then go to the next board meeting. We're not going to be able to do it, though, for October because of the board meeting will be devoted to the final CEO interviews, obviously. So what we'll do is bring those actions that we approved today to the November board meeting for that. And then also in our next Governance Committee meeting, we'll then look at going final on what we just discussed today, the governance process and also the MOEs. And so once we do that, the good news is we're done, really complete with the initial draft for the BPM. So again, I still think we're on track, unless there's unforeseen circumstances, of being able to go to the board in December for final approval of our board policy manual for that. So that said, let me pause to see if there's any questions at all.
Mr. Chairman, I'm throwing a wild card at you, but I'd like to get y'all's thoughts. I don't think I see anywhere in the policy manual where JEA is supposed to work on growth in the community. And I think that's been a question that was largely unanswered a lot of times. Bobby Stein told me that when they did Nocatee in the water area, it was unclear whether they should do that or not do that. And it's turned out to be a great thing. I've heard conversely that JEA does not do much to try to attract industry to the city. And I just think it would be worth burning some brain calories to figure out if we should have a policy on economic development by JEA and what's appropriate and what is not appropriate. The obvious one that comes up is the moving the wires across the river.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, that's a great point. And I mean, quite honestly, it was in that was one of the key questions in the CEO interviews that we did too for that. So it sort of has been addressed, and I don't think it's a bridge too far to get this appropriately addressed in the board policy manual. Quite honestly, I'm just at the top of my head. I don't think this will be difficult at all. We can put it in CEO evaluation criteria. We also could put it in possibly the board evaluation criteria too, to see if we're keeping right focus on those two things for that, as well as some other category areas. I think we could put it in. So I think that can be incorporated without disrupting anything, and it probably does add to the quality of the manual.
I would ask Jody to weigh in on what's appropriate. I mean, we've got ratepayers that aren't in Duval County, and do we literally have the right to do that? For instance, move the wires and pay for it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I can work with Chairman DeSalvo and look at those different issues from an economic development perspective and community as a whole issue. There has been something from a requirement perspective on analyzing the marketplace and politics and economy. There's something in the government documents that speak to that. I just can't pull it up right this second. And so I can work, but I have to do probably a little bit more research into the idea from a community as a whole perspective. Could ratepayer dollars be paid for something like the utility lines if you have a right to be able to do that? I think that's probably more of a political question than a legal question. But let me look into it before I just answer at this meeting.
Right. I think the first step is to make sure it's not a legal question, and then we can handle it if it's political.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Jody. And I have nothing else on this end as far as the agenda goes. Let me just pause real briefly, see if there's any other comments. Okay, nothing heard. And again, want to thank everybody for their cooperation and input onto this. Again, I think the process is doing well, and we're on a good glide path right now. So I want to thank everybody for their participation. Thank you and have a good day. This meeting's adjourned.
Great job.
Thank you. Great job. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.